get started. Thank you, Hannah. It's great. So you're all very welcome to our Healthier You Wellbeing series. If you haven't been to a session before with us, we run wellbeing sessions pretty much every month on different topics. And it all, being January, we decided to run a series around becoming a healthier you. So today's session centered around nutrition specifically, and different nutrition tips and foods that we can include within our diet to improve our overall health and well-being. I'm just going to mute a few people there. That's okay, because there's a little bit of echo in the background. So just before we jump straight into today's session, I want to do a little poll with you. So let me see. So let me just launch it. Apologies, just letting the last few people in and just making sure everyone's mute there. Thank you. Great. Right, apologies. My little screen has gone missing where I launched the poll. So I'm going to stop sharing quickly and launch the poll from here. So hopefully you should be able to see, okay, that launched now. And if not, let me know, but it should hopefully just appear on your screen called Healthier You session. So if you want to make your way through some of those questions, little myths and facts. There's a couple more people in the waiting room. Hannah, are you able to let them in? Because I'll just X my screen. Brilliant. Thank you. Interesting. So I'll give you one more minute just on the questions. So if you've just joined us, you're very welcome. Just launched a quick poll, testing the pulse of some nutrition knowledge here. Brilliant. Okay. Apologies, I'm going to have to round it up now. So if you're on your last question, give it a little quick click, and I'm going to end the poll and share some of the results. Okay. So some of these are just based on, some traditional myths that continue to, I suppose, roll around in the media. So question number 1, eggs can increase your cholesterol. The answer is myth. So eggs do contain dietary cholesterol. However, that cholesterol found within the yolk of eggs has not been shown to increase serum or blood cholesterol. So rest assured, you can include eggs within your diet without worrying too much. And to be honest, there's no real limit on the amount of eggs we should consume each week. I suppose all I would really recommend is that you consider varying your protein sources rather than sticking to the same ones each day or each week. Eating too much ham increases your risk of cancer. This is an interesting one, pretty much 50-50. The answer actually is fact. So ham is considered to be a processed meat, and processed meats are group 1 carcinogen, which is linked with increased risk of cancer. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in today's session. But unfortunately, the traditional ham sandwiches here that I was fed, and most of us were fed and probably still have a lot in our lunch boxes, maybe need to be considered in terms of smarter swaps. So question number 3, butter can increase your cholesterol. The answer is fact. So saturated fats found in butter and other animal fats can clog the arteries and increase the LDL cholesterol, which is linked with higher risk of heart disease. Diabetes is caused by eating too much sugar. People could argue this one. However, the answer is myth. Diabetes is caused by excess weight within the body, which causes insulin resistance. Yes, I suppose you could argue that eating too much sugar over a prolonged period of time increases weight, but the direct cause is not sugar in itself. And lastly, coconut oil is the best oil to cook with. Answer's myth. So coconut oil, if you think of coconut oil, it's a saturated fat. It's a hard fat at room temperature. Therefore, it hardens in the arteries just like butter. So the better oil to cook with would be something like extra virgin olive oil or extra virgin avocado oil if you're cooking at higher temperatures. So we'll talk a little bit more about that during the session. So well done, folks. Not bad. Some good knowledge there, which is great. So I'm just going to share my screen again and get started with the main part of today's session. So my name's Catherine and I'm the Wellbeing Programme Manager here at Business in the Community. My background is in nutrition, so I'm a registered dietitian and I specialise in health promotion and public health. But today's session is going to just be centred around food and nutrition to prevent ill health. So if we look at our statistics here in Northern Ireland, they're continuing to rise when it comes to cancer, diabetes, heart diseases and other non-communicable diseases. So we want to stay well at work, and really this session's all about maybe encouraging you to think about the food and diet side of things to improve your overall health, energy, hormones and how you feel day to day. So we'll look at tips to improve your nutrition, snacks, meal ideas, supplements, and then a little bit of a Q&A at the end. Alrighty. So although I'm talking about nutrition today, I just want to remind us all that nutrition isn't the only pillar of health, and there's about 5 key pillars that I tend to recommend or talk about when I do sessions. So nutrition is one of 5, the others being movement, sleep, connection and support, and stress management. So they're all important and they all must be balanced. And yes, we're going to be prioritising nutrition today, but I suppose in general, it is important to account for the other pillars of health too. So just a quick MOT. I'm not sure if anyone gets a health check. Maybe your workplace provides it, maybe not. But it is important to know your numbers and to do a little maybe health assessment on your own. So if you're not assessing, I always say you are just guessing. And sometimes it can be helpful to know your health data in order to, I suppose, ensure that they're staying within the healthy range, or maybe if they're not, to maybe make some changes. So ask yourself, are you doing 150 minutes of cardio exercise per week, in addition to 2 days of strength training? Because that's the minimum recommended level that we should be performing per week. Do you eat roughly 5 fruit and vegetables per day? Is your blood pressure 120/80 or less? And that's a really important number because that, I suppose, dictates the pressure that your heart is under. Is your cholesterol ratio less than 5? So cholesterol ratio is a little calculation that we do to compare your LDL to your HDL, which is like a better cholesterol versus a bad cholesterol. And that can help reflect then overall cholesterol levels within your blood. In terms of BMI, I'm not a huge advocate of BMI or body mass index. So it's a calculation we do to see if your weight is healthy for your height. But it's a population health tool. It's not very accurate on an individual level. So I prefer to look at waist circumference because that's a better indicator of where you store fat within your body. And that also is a better indicator of ill health and some diseases, like non-communicable diseases. So for men, ideally, you want to have a belly button waist size of less than 37 inches. And then for females, less than 32. And then finally, when it comes to alcohol, and I always say don't shoot the messenger here, but it is recommended that we consume less than 14 units of alcohol per week. So that's equivalent to 6 pints, or it's not 1 small glass of wine. That's a misspelling. Unfortunately, it's 7 small glasses of wine, which are about 175 mils. Okay. And ideally, we don't want to be saving up those units and having them all in one sitting. We want to be, aiming to maybe break them through the period of the week. So less binge drinking, I suppose. So let's just look at now foods and things that we can do to prevent ill health. So pretty much 50% of all cancers are preventable. 80% of premature heart attacks and strokes are preventable. And 9 out of 10 type 2 diabetes cases are preventable. So we do know from the research that so much of our premature deaths here in Northern Ireland can be prevented through diet and lifestyle. So we're going to take a little look at some foods that can potentially increase our risk of ill health. So first up is processed meats. So processed meats are ham, bacon, sausages, burgers, salami, chorizo, anything cured, salted, fermented. They are classed as group 1 carcinogens, which can contribute or has been shown to be linked with cancer. And there's a lot of evidence to support that. So the recommendations around processed meat are to reduce them as much as possible and swap them to leaner cuts of protein or going more plant-based proteins as well. Processed meat also has a lot of salt and a lot of saturated fats, so they also contribute to high cholesterol and high blood pressure. So again, still recommended from a heart disease standpoint to be reduced or limited. Alcohol, number 2, there is no safe limit of alcohol consumption. So it used to be that, I suppose, that, it was recommended that if you stayed in under the 14 units that it was okay, but that evidence has now been revoked, and now the research states that there's no safe limit, and the less the better. Again, alcohol is a type 1 carcinogen, and it is linked with 7 different types of cancer as well as high blood pressure. The biggest link we have with alcohol is breast cancer. So particularly with females, we need to be extra cautious around our alcohol consumption. Third is red meat. So the research around red meat is that it's a group 2 carcinogen. So it has been linked with increased risk of cancer, but the cause has not been established. So what we mean by that is we don't know the mechanism behind that, but the advice is still that we should have red meat no more than 2 times per week, and we should aim to limit our portion size and frequency of red meat. So red meats are beef, pork, lamb, venison, veal, those types of meats as well. Red meat also has higher levels of saturated fats. So for example, if you see a steak, you can visibly see the fat on sirloin, or maybe if it's mince, you can visibly see the fat within that meat. And again, that has been shown to be contributed to higher levels of cholesterol too. Saturated fats and trans fats. So think of saturated fats as hard fats at room temperature. So they include fatty meats like bacon, burgers, steak with the fat visible, butter, cream, coconut oil, which we maybe looked at in our poll there at the very beginning. Coconut oil is a saturated fat. There's absolutely no denying that. And anyone that has a history of high cholesterol that runs in their family or a history of heart disease should aim to reduce the levels of saturated fat within their diet as much as they can. Trans fat is a type of fat that is produced during cooking to high temperatures. To be honest, a lot of it's banned now in the UK, or it's recommended that they're limited, but it's still in some food. So what you're looking out for in trans fats are in the food labels, hydrogenated vegetable oils. So if you see that term, to be honest, we are aiming to avoid them as much as possible, because again, linked with higher levels of cholesterol and high levels of cancer. Ultra processed foods, I'm going to show you a little picture in the next slide, which classes all, it compares different types of processing within foods and how to, I suppose, dictate whether a food is processed or ultra processed. But ultra processed foods tend to be higher in salt, fat, sugar, and they tend to also be lower in fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Sounds all doom and gloom, guys, but we will get more positive, I promise. Tobacco then, again, a type 1 or group 1 carcinogen, and it continues to be the biggest and most leading cause of cancer in the world. It also increases blood pressure, which places extra pressure on the heart and on the lungs. So it is recommended to stop smoking and seek support where possible. High salt foods contribute to high blood pressure. So when we look at blood pressure, we're looking at the 3 S's: salt, sleep, and stress. So aiming to check food labels, and if you do suffer with high blood pressure, I do recommend that you aim to reduce salt added during cooking at the dinner table or at lunch tables, and also just check food labels to look out for lower salt products as well. So for example, if you're going for like beans or sauces, going for ones with no added salt. Nitrates and nitric acids are basically what are added to processed meats. So I spoke about processed meats at the very beginning, but it's the ingredient nitrates and nitrites and nitrates, apologies, that are the key ingredient that has been shown to be carcinogenic. So that's really what you're trying to avoid when you are limiting your processed meats. And then also there's hydrocarbons that are basically formed when meats are cooked at really high temperatures, such as barbecuing, pan frying, smoking, and grilling meats. And it's basically like the burnt and black bits that you would see on meats that have been linked with cancer too. And then the last thing I will say is that although it's not a typical food, obesity and being overweight increases your risk of all of those that I've spoke about, such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. So again, that's obesity and overweight is caused by excess consumption of calories. And then we maybe need to look at the source of those calories within the diet too. So those are the foods that can increase our risk of ill health. There are 4 groups that Novo classes within the processing scale. So you'll see here in the green section are basically non-processed foods. So they're foods that you would typically pick from the ground. They pretty much don't really go under any processing, maybe frozen or maybe bagging as such. So you'll see there's fruit and veg, meat, milk, that sort of thing, and legumes such as beans, nuts and seeds, those types of things. So pretty much natural products. In the yellow section, you will see group 1 or group 2 in terms of processing, and they are obtained from minimally processed foods and used to season, cook, or create some dishes. So for example, salt, oils, butters, and other fats as well. So again, quite little processing has been going into those types of foods as well. Group 3 then are considered to be processed foods. So they are minimally processed foods which things have maybe been added to. So certain ingredients have maybe been added to maybe preserve them or enhance the flavor. So think bottled vegetables like gherkins or maybe peppers, meat in salt solutions, so maybe tinned meats, fruits and syrups or fruit juices, breads, cheeses, purees, or pastes, maybe tinned tomatoes, that sort of things as well. So these foods have things added to them to flavour them or preserve them. And then finally, we have ultra processed foods. So these are the ones that we recommend to reduce as much as possible. They are food products derived from parts of food, and many of them actually contain very little of the natural ingredients. You might look at the back of a pack and it contains maybe the first ingredient listed is sugar or maybe oils and things like that. So they're pretty much made from very low quality ingredients. So think of cookies, ice cream, ready to eat, maybe takeaways, other sugary foods, hamburgers, nuggets. So again, lots of salt, fats, and sugar added. They are very tasty, I will say that. So I'm not saying avoid them completely. They're also necessary within our diets for fun, for flavour, for social occasions as well. But I suppose it's just about the poisons in the dose really, and it's how much you're having on a weekly basis that will dictate overall health. So let's take a look at foods that can reduce your risk. There'll be absolutely no surprises here to see the top contenders. Fruits, so there's ingredients in fruit called phytochemicals. I call them fighting chemicals because essentially they have been shown to help prevent or fight different diseases and improve our overall immunity when it comes to overall health and well-being. And they can help reduce our risk of chronic diseases such as cancer. They're found in any basically fruit or vegetable. So in particular, things like berries, tomatoes, kiwis, peaches. So very brightly rich coloured fruit and veg. When it comes to vegetables, deep green leafy vegetables, carrots, beans, and beans do count towards 1 of your 5 a day, which is great. Whole grains as well. So whole grains are considered grains as such. So think oats, shredded wheat, Weetabix, whole grain or seeded breads, quinoa, couscous, barley, pasta, which is the whole grain version, and whole grain rice versions as well. Many of them contain lots of fiber, which is the key superman power that can reduce our risk of cancer, heart disease, and help us stay at a healthy weight as well. Legumes then, they contain a lot of soluble fiber, which really basically are passed through our digestive tract. They're very beneficial for our gut bacteria as well. And they're found in beans, lentils, and chickpeas. Unfortunately, we do get some side effects of them. So they tend to be flatulent, quite high in flatulence. So some people can get a little bit bloated and things like that when eating them. So I suppose the key there is to find your sweet spot with how much you can tolerate and aim to increase them slowly. Lean proteins then. So again, maybe swapping away from the processed meats like the ham, the bacon, the sausages, the burgers, and aiming to choose lean fish, chicken, eggs, soya, dairy, or again, the beans, peas, lentils, the plant-based options there too, as much as possible. Healthy fats. So the research shows that if we swap from the hardened saturated fats and replace those with unsaturated fats, then that can have a beneficial effect on our blood cholesterol and our overall weight as well. So the way I like to kind of explain unsaturated fats is they tend to be more liquid at room temperature. So if you compare like olive oil versus butter, the olive oil is an unsaturated fat or a healthier fat versus the butter, which is a more hard fat, which can clog the arteries. So other types of healthy fats are nuts, seeds, and avocados. And then lastly, plant stanols or plant sterols. So they're essentially, if you have high cholesterol, using foods with added plant stanols has been shown to lower cholesterol, but you do need to have the dose of 1.5 to 3 grams per day. So you can get them from little drink products or spreads and some yogurts as well, both branded and supermarket owned. It doesn't really matter if you go for branded or non-branded. And if you do decide to use them, if you have high cholesterol, just make sure that you follow the recommended guidelines on the packet. So just a quick summary in terms of cancer prevention recommendations. So they call this the blueprint to beat cancer. So it shows a little bit more than just the diet thing here, which I thought was just important to show in a quick snapshot. So eating diets rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans have been shown to protect against cancer. Limiting your consumption of red meat and processed meat as well. Limiting consumption of fast food. So they're the ultra processed foods that I spoke about. For mothers, breastfeed your baby if you can. So breastfeeding has been shown to have a protective effect in children against cancer and other types of diseases. After a cancer diagnosis, basically speak to healthcare professional about certain medications and things. Be a healthy weight, be physically active, limit consumption of sugar-sweetened drinks. So drink mostly water and unsweetened drinks, because sweetened drinks have been linked with increased weight gain. Limit alcohol. For cancer prevention, it's best not to drink. And do not use supplements for cancer prevention. Aim to meet nutritional needs through diet alone. I will speak about supplements in a second, but again here, what they're aiming to do is recommend that you choose a food first approach. So don't just, drink your greens powder and then be having your takeaways. It's more about trying to consider how to meet your nutritional needs through your diet. And then other things here is to avoid smoking and other environmental exposures where possible too. So just some top tips in terms of improving your overall nutrition. So we looked at foods that are recommended that can reduce your risk of cancer and heart disease and diabetes And then we also looked at foods that can increase risk of diseases too. So I'm just going to put that all together and talk about in general just 5 tips that you could maybe consider that would improve your overall diet and nutrition. So tip number 1 is to focus on what you can add to your diet. So this is rather than thinking about what you need to exclude or restrict, it's about asking yourself each day, what can I add to my diet to improve it? Because when you think about taking away food or restricting foods, it's quite negative, and we can become quite obsessed and restrictive when it comes to that type of mindset. So instead, when I'm working with people or educating people, I like to use an inclusion mindset. So for example, can you think about adding in a regular meal pattern? So if your eating is quite chaotic and you skip meals or you go long periods of time without eating, that can increase your risk of binge eating behaviors and also increase your risk of eating more ultra processed foods, because you're more likely to want to feel full quite quickly if you're hungry. And in terms of eating a regular meal pattern, aim to as well prioritize protein at meal time. So making sure you're getting a portion of protein, because protein, essentially every cell within our body is made with protein. Protein helps with growth and repair. And from even a cancer perspective, protein can help repair damaged cells, which is really, really important for us. It helps keep us full for longer, and it helps us retain our lean muscle mass as we age. In addition to exercise and strength training, you can't just retain it, unfortunately, without the exercise as well. Vitamin D supplement. So vitamin D is a super power supplement, to be honest. And unfortunately, from where we live, as we all know, we just do not get enough sunshine. It is basically impossible to get vitamin D from food. You can only really get it from sunlit grown mushrooms and eggs that are laid outside, or the hens are outside in sunshine. So that's very, very unlikely here in Northern Ireland. So that is my one blanket recommendation for everyone here in this call, that if you are not already taking a vitamin D supplement, please get it from your local pharmacy, Tesco's, Asda, Sainsbury's. It doesn't really matter. To be honest, most vitamin D supplements are on par. And just make sure that it contains 100% your recommended daily allowance, so about 10 micrograms or more. Omega-3 has been shown as well to protect against heart diseases and cancers, and it's also been shown to reduce the risk of depression. So omega-3 is an essential fatty acid that we cannot make within our body, therefore we must get from food. The best source is found in smashed fish, which stands for salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, and trout. If you're vegetarian or vegan and don't eat fish, you can instead get omega-3 from linseed or flaxseed or walnuts, although it's not as easy to absorb from those sources, so you may need higher doses, and you do need them more frequently. So it's probably recommended to include the likes of a linseed or walnut each day if you're aiming to get that omega-3 about 1 gram per day, which is the recommendation. Color. So color, again, not beige. We're always very good at beige. So when I say color, I mean nice brightly colored fruit and vegetables. So consider adding in color to every meal if you can. Nuts and seeds. The research around nuts and seeds is very powerful. And basically as well, I know a lot of people fear nuts and seeds for the calories, but the research show that including a portion of nuts or seeds per day, actually you're more likely to be a healthier weight. And again, it has been shown to have better outcomes when it comes to cancer risk and heart disease risk as well. Whole grains. So whole grains are, whole grain bread, pastas, all those types of things. They contain fiber, and fiber is that superpower that protects us from lots of diseases and keeps us full for longer. Fermented foods, bacteria. So for example, my kefir milk is stretched here for some reason, but kefir is an example of a fermented food, as is live bacterial yogurts. So if you read a yogurt label that says live cultures, it contains live bacteria. If you're plant-based, there's many plant-based yogurts that contain the live culture too. Sauerkraut, kimchi, and kombucha all contain fermented cultures as well. However, the research is probably showing that fermented dairy is probably our best source, and kefir would be the gold standard when it comes to fermented foods because it contains 14 strains of bacteria compared to some foods that only contain 1 or 2 live cultures. But again, the consistency of those exposures is the most important thing, so how regular you are having those. And then lastly, herbs and spices too, which again introduces new diversity to our gut bacteria. So ideally, the recommendation is to aim for 30 different plant-based foods per week. For many people, that can seem very unrealistic. So again, just start with that inclusion mindset and aim to consider, what can I add to my meal today to improve it? Can I add some color, maybe some seeds, some nuts, some whole grains, some legumes, beans, peas, lentils, those types of foods. Tip number 2 is eat a Mediterranean type of diet. Someone's just asked, what does the H stand for? Herring. So salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, and trout. So great question, Margaret. Tip number 2, eat a Mediterranean style diet. So the one diet that across the board has been linked with reductions in ill health is the Mediterranean. Now, I will say that these countries, live close to the equator, they get their sunshine, they tend to relax and eat their meals with family. So they eat with people, not with screens. They, mainly home cook their food. They connect with their food. They connect with the seasons. And they, again, it's not complex. They eat, quite simple meals actually at the end of it. They tend to have maybe salad or vegetables with most meals too. And if you look at the pyramid kind of dictates the pattern that most Mediterranean style countries consume. And again, the pattern is the most important thing here, because when it comes to food, when I look at people's diet, I would like to see a pattern that they can stick to for years. A specific diet or maybe framework, usually most people can only stick to for months or a couple of weeks. But when it comes to trying to establish a good diet pattern, they're the types of habits that you can stick to for years to come. And that's what I would recommend. So, including daily fruit and veg, whole grains, dairy, extra virgin olive oil, and a portion of nuts each day. And then just varying your protein sources, that you'll see there too. And I suppose what they do as well is they see their foods as more than calories. Are any nuts better than others? Great question. No. For example, I talked about walnuts. They contain omega-3. Let me see, Brazil nuts contain selenium. Certain nuts like cashews and all contain vitamin E and zinc. So no, I would aim for a variety. And actually I would aim to buy a different type of nut each week, or buy mixed bags of nuts. I want to say nuts, I'm not talking about KP salted nuts as well. Sorry. I'm more so talking about unsalted nuts. So basically, think of like your gut bacteria's little soldiers, and every single soldier likes or has different preference for a different food or different bacteria. So every single nut counts as a different plant food. So even when I said earlier about 30 different plant foods, if you're going for maybe a mixed bag of nuts and there's about 4 or 5 different types of nuts within that, that's 4 or 5 different types of plants basically. Bernie, is olive oil better than rapeseed oil? Yes, from my standpoint, it is, because of the phytochemicals within it, the compounds, and also it has a slightly higher smoke point than rapeseed oil. Going for extra virgin cold pressed olive oil in a dark bottle is best, because it's more likely to be stable. However, the smoke point of extra virgin olive oil tends to be around 180 degrees, 190 if you're lucky. So if you're stir frying or cooking at very high temperatures a lot of the time, I would then go for extra virgin avocado oil. That's better in stir fried foods, if that makes sense. And the reason for that is because when oils are cooked to high temperatures beyond their smoke point, they become destroyed or denatured, if that makes sense. Rapeseed oil is still a very good oil, I will say that, but olive oil just comes out a little bit better in terms of the nutrient profile of it. Okay. So I'm going to be taking questions. I've just got a couple of more tips here, and then we'll finish with supplements and questions. Not going to spend too long here. Tip 3 is about smart swaps. And again, I use that inclusion approach. So rather than thinking, oh, what do I need to restrict? It's about what can I include instead? So instead of eating processed meats, can you include leaner proteins? So eggs, beans, chicken, turkey, fish, or lean red meat. Instead of white carbohydrate, can you swap to whole grain or seeded version? Instead of takeaways, can you maybe consider cooking your foods from scratch a little bit more? Because again, you can control the salt, the sugar, the flavors that are added. Can you swap from the hard fats, so the butter, the coconut oils, to more the healthier fats like olive oil, avocados, mayonnaise, pesto, hummus? You might not like me for this one, but milk chocolate to dark chocolate, just from the standpoint that dark chocolate has a lot less sugar, but also dark chocolate, again, contains a lot of compounds. So cacao has been linked with lots of health benefits. It's very rich in magnesium, and you can retrain your taste buds. It does take time. But I find a lot of people at this time of year struggle with sugar cravings because they're used to the heroes and celebrations around Christmas time. And it's because your taste buds become very used to sugar. And it's very difficult then to kind of wean that down a little bit. So swapping to more like the darker chocolates and maybe going for more nuts, or if you are having chocolate, one thing I like to do is I like to make my own trail mix with unsalted nuts and maybe mix some like M&Ms through it. So you're breaking up, you know, the amount of chocolate you're having with some healthy fats there too. And then swapping from sugary drinks to more water, dilute, or no added sugar teas and coffees too. There's a really good app called the NHS Food Scanner, and it's really good for scanning QR codes or the barcodes and then checking the salt, fat, and sugar in some foods. So if you really struggle with reading labels, it gives you like a little thumbs up or a little thumbs down or a little kind of in between a thumb when it comes to checking labels. It's great for kids too because you can check the sugar. It shows you like the sugar cubes in certain foods as well. So it can be good to get them involved. Tip 4, aim for 2 colours per meal. Beige doesn't count because we're very good at beige. You know, Northern Ireland, we love our spuds, we love our bread, we love our cereals, things like that. And we find it a bit more challenging to get the bright colours in. So, you know, consider at breakfast time, can I add some berries, a kiwi? At lunch, can I go for a dark green leafy vegetable? So going for more like a spinach or rocket would probably be better than going for maybe a lettuce. And again, dinner time, can you maybe sneak in some vegetables? So going for like chopped tomatoes, adding in a tin of chickpeas, what else? Even using jarred, don't be afraid to use jarred vegetables like gherkins and things like that as well, sometimes just to add in some easy flavour and veg. And then tip number 5 is to be mindful of your alcohol intake, not only from the standpoint that alcohol triggers like damage to cells, so it's like a toxin within our cell. You know, the more alcohol we consume, the higher the risk of toxins to, you know, create mutations with increase our cancer risk. It also puts additional pressure on the heart, because it's a toxin, so our heart has to pump the blood around the body faster to try and excrete the toxin out of the body. So it increases your blood pressure, which increases your risk of disease. But also it contains a lot of hidden calories. So we call them empty calories, where they contain absolutely no nutrients, but extra calories. And for many people, it can lead to a lot of unwanted weight gain. Okay. So if you keep good food in your fridge, you will eat good food. And a lot of research to support that. Even keeping a fruit bowl out and visible increases your consumption of fruit and veg by 5 portions every week. So yeah, what you have in your fridge and in your cupboards really will influence what you eat. So I am just going to, I have some meal ideas and I will share them with you in the slides and handouts. But I want to actually just slide across to the supplements section here, if that's okay, just due to time constraints here. And then if anybody's any questions, pop them in the chat. The only one supplement I recommend for everyone is vitamin D. In addition to that, I mean, you could also, if you really wanted, add a multivitamin in with vitamin D. I like the brand Naturello just because it's fairly made from natural ingredients and no bulkers or agents, and it contains a good level of vitamin D. In addition to that, really, to be honest, nothing else is really required. It depends on where the gaps lie. And basically what supplements do is they supplement the gaps. So protein shakes can be beneficial if you play sport or exercise frequently. That's basically powdered milk. So, you don't fear them, but they're maybe only necessary if you do a lot of exercise and find protein harder to get. If you don't eat fish, 1 to 2 grams of omega-3 could be beneficial there. If you find you have trouble sleeping or you're very stressed and you don't eat a lot of things like seeds, green leafy vegetables, a magnesium glycinate supplement could be beneficial too, so 200 micrograms or milligrams. And finally, if you suffer with poor gut health or you want to maybe potentially improve gut health, choosing a probiotic might be helpful. To be honest, probiotics only work in 50% of people. And it really just depends on your current diversity of your gut as to what you're kind of adding in, what bacteria you're adding in. So again, very challenging to kind of I suppose, identify. But I like the brand Biocult because it's fairly reasonable and good quality. So that is us finished our quick Better You, Healthier You session. So I'm just going to stop sharing there, guys, and I'm just going to answer some questions in the next couple of minutes, as many as I can, if that's all right. So feel free to drop them in the chat box as well. We have recorded the session. I know it's a fast-paced one, so if you do want to check back, we will be sending that out in a follow-up slide or email. So let me have a little look at some things here. Let's see, are vitamin D sprays effective? Yep, Rona. So sprays or capsule are both on par, doesn't really matter. Whichever you remember to take is the most important. Put it beside your toothbrush or somewhere that you will remember to take. Is ham you cook, boil at home considered processed, or is it the cooked ham slices that are considered processed? Good question, Judy. Most pork has been salted and cured. So it's actually, even before you bought it, it has the nitrates added that are salting that. So to be honest, even if you do cook it from home, it still contains the nitrates, which are linked with higher risk of cancer. But sometimes you can get nitrate-free ham and nitrate-free bacon. Some butchers do it, so you could also maybe check that out as well. But unfortunately, yes, it's still classed as processed. Best dairy alternatives, Jane. Soya, milk, and yogurts would be the best substitute for milk because of the protein content. If you're buying dairy-free, just make sure that you do not choose organic milks because organic milks do not have calcium added. So you need calcium. Basically, what you're substituting the dairy for is a calcium alternative, and organic plant-based milks do not have calcium added. So soya would probably be the gold standard because of the protein content. Just making sure, read the label, make sure there's calcium added and vitamin D in some cases, and make sure that you shake your plant-based milk really well because the calcium always falls to the bottom. Does, let me see, yoga count as strength training? Kathleen, great question. As a yoga teacher, I would say yes. I'm a bit biased here, but I suppose it depends on the level of, the amount of body-based, work you're doing within your yoga session. Like if you're doing a lot of chaturangas, a lot of press-ups, a lot of lunges, squats, things like that, then yes, certainly it will be. Where if it's more yin yoga, where you're just holding stretches, that wouldn't really be classed as strength-based. Magnesium, just buy any brand or particular brand. Again, Alison, I like Naturello just because it's less rubbish added to it, to be honest. So I'll just put that in the chat. I'm not endorsed or anything by them, but I just really like their supplements and I believe it's very well priced for that point. Is chicken turkey mince classed as processed? No, it's not, Oliver. Good question. It's not a processed meat. So chicken, turkey, and even lean red meat is not processed. Okay. It's more so foods that are salted, cured, fermented, ready-made soup to heat in the microwave, healthy or not. Judy, great question. I mean, just look at the label, just make sure that the ingredients that are stated are mainly vegetables. Most of them are great. Going for more a bean-based soup or lentil-based soup is a good idea because of the protein. So it's a really good like meat. Like if you're only having that with bread, it's a great option because you're more likely then to hit like a higher protein level within that meal. Whereas if you're just going for like sometimes a plain vegetable soup and then having bread with it, it's quite a high carbohydrate meal. So if that's the case, add a yogurt or something like that to make it a bit more balanced. But yeah, they're fine. Okay, I think that's us, guys. Well done. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be sending a follow-up email just with some of the handouts and the recording so that you can have some bedtime reading and watch back in your own time. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I hope to see you all at the next session, which is next month. Let me just check the date for you guys.